Daniel Hayes had always believed that some days carried a quiet magic in the air, an invisible pull that guided a person toward moments they could never predict. On the day he arrived at Red Canyon, he felt that strange feeling stronger than ever. He had been driving for hours across the warm, open roads of Arizona, watching the land stretch wide in every direction. The sky was clear, the sun soft against the cliffs, and everything looked peaceful. He was only there to take pictures of the sunset. Nothing more. But life, he was about to learn, had other plans. Daniel was a thoughtful man, someone who noticed small details, how the colors of the rocks changed when the sunlight shifted, how the wind carried the scent of dry earth, how even the quiet seemed to have its own kind of music. Photography was not just his job. It was his way of understanding the world. Red Canyon was famous among photographers for its glowing evening light, and Daniel had always dreamed of capturing it. He parked his old, dusty Jeep at the small overlook where hikers usually started their trail. There were no other cars around, which made him smile. He liked the calm of being alone with nature. He packed his camera, a bottle of water, and a small first aid kit, something he always carried just in case. Then, he began walking into the canyon. The path was gentle at first, winding between smooth stones and patches of tall grass. The walls of the canyon rose on both sides, glowing red and orange. Sunlight poured down like warm honey, spreading over everything. Daniel took a few practice shots, adjusting his lens, enjoying the soft echo of his footsteps. But as he walked deeper, he heard something unexpected, a faint sound behind the whisper of wind. At first, he thought it was a bird, or maybe the distant call of an animal. But when he paused, holding his breath, he heard it again. It was not a bird. It was a human voice. A voice filled with worry. A voice calling for help. Daniel froze for a moment, unsure if he had imagined it. The canyon often played tricks with sound, bouncing noises from far away. But then the cry came again, clearer this time, soft, shaky, and very real. "Is someone there?" His heart jumped. The voice didn't answer him directly, but he heard a small, frightened sound, like someone trying to speak but unable to raise their voice. Daniel carefully followed the sound, stepping off the main path and moving toward a narrow passage between the rocks. The air grew cooler there, shaded from the sun. The light dimmed, but the voice became clearer with each step. Daniel's calm nature shifted into gentle alertness. He wasn't scared, but his mind sharpened, ready to help whoever needed him. He rounded a bend and finally saw her. At the far end of the passage, a young woman sat on the ground beside her horse. The horse was calm, but breathing a little heavily, standing with one leg slightly lifted, as if uncomfortable. The young woman, dressed in simple riding clothes and braided hair, was leaning against the canyon wall. She did not look badly hurt, but she seemed shaken and unable to stand. When she noticed Daniel, her eyes widened not with fear, but with relief so deep it softened her entire face. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I didn't think anyone would hear me." Her voice carried strength, even though she was clearly tired. Daniel approached slowly, offering a warm smile. She took a breath. There was a small slide. Some stones came down suddenly. My horse got startled and slipped a little. I fell too quickly and twisted my ankle. I can't walk on it right now. Art. Daniel nodded gently. He knelt down beside her, careful not to alarm the horse. "May I take a look? I'm not a doctor, but I know basics." She agreed with a small nod. He examined her ankle without touching it too much. It was slightly swollen, but not in a dangerous way. Still, she needed help to get out. "What's your name?" Daniel asked softly. "Alina," she replied, "and this is Starfire." She touched her horse's mane with affection. "I'm Daniel," he said. "And don't worry. We'll get you both out safely." Alina let out a small breath of relief. She had been trying to stay calm, but hours alone in the quiet canyon had worn on her. She explained that she had come to the canyon earlier in the afternoon to enjoy a peaceful ride. She knew the land well, but even then, unexpected things could happen. Daniel gave her water and made sure she was comfortable while he thought about what to do. He had walked quite a distance from his jeep, and carrying her all the way back would not be easy. He didn't want to leave her alone either, not when she was clearly in need of support. After thinking for a moment, he gently helped her to stand, letting her lean on him. Alina moved slowly, trying not to put weight on her ankle. Starfire followed them calmly, as if understanding the situation and trusting Daniel because Alina did. They walked in careful steps, Daniel supporting most of her weight. He spoke softly, asking her simple questions, hoping to make her feel more at ease. Alina answered shyly at first, but soon she warmed up. She told him about her love for riding, how she grew up exploring these lands, how she found comfort in the sounds of birds and the sight of open skies. Daniel listened with genuine interest. He told her about his photography, the places he had traveled, and the little details he loved to capture. Reflections on water, footprints in sand, the way the world grew quiet right before sunset. The more they talked, the lighter the mood became. The canyon no longer felt silent or lonely. It felt like a space of connection. Still, the walk was slow, and Daniel stayed patient, never rushing her. He adjusted his pace to hers, asking every few minutes if she was okay or needed a break. Alina was surprised by how calm he remained. Most strangers, she thought, would have panicked or grown frustrated. But Daniel treated the moment with gentle seriousness, as if helping someone was the most natural thing in the world. When they finally reached the mouth of the canyon, the sky was glowing with soft orange light. His jeep waited near the overlook, like a promise of safety. Daniel helped Alina onto the passenger seat while guiding Starfire to a shaded area to rest. "Thank you," she said once she settled into the seat. Her voice carried emotion now. Gratitude, mixed with the exhaustion of the long walk. "I didn't think anyone would come before dark." Daniel shook his head with a quiet smile. "You're not alone out here. And it wasn't trouble. I'm glad I was nearby. Ender 4. Well a bitter 4. Ender 4. Ender 4. Ender 4. Ender 4. Ender 4. Alina studied him for a moment, as if seeing something deeper than his friendly expression. "You didn't have to help me so much," she said softly. "But you did." Daniel, a little shy under her steady gaze, simply replied, "Anyone would have." But Alina knew that wasn't true. Not everyone stops. Not everyone listens. Not everyone walks into a canyon because they hear a faint voice. She felt something shift inside her, a small spark of unexpected respect for this stranger who didn't know her but treated her like someone important. As the sun dipped lower, the warm light wrapped the canyon in gold, making everything glow. Daniel started the engine, ready to drive her to the community clinic nearby. Alina sat quietly, watching the road and brushing her fingers over Starfire's reins as the horse trotted gently behind them. In that quiet moment, neither of them knew how deeply this simple act of kindness would change their lives. They only knew that something unusual had happened, something meaningful, something that felt like the beginning of a story neither of them had expected to be part of. And Red Canyon, peaceful and glowing around them, seemed to hold its breath, as if it knew this was only the first chapter. The drive from Red Canyon to the nearby clinic was slow, steady, and surprisingly peaceful. Daniel kept glancing at Alina from time to time, not in worry, but to make sure she was comfortable. Her ankle was still swollen, but she seemed calmer now that she was no longer alone. The warm evening light flowed through the Jeep's windows, bathing everything in soft gold. Starfire walked beside them, tied gently to the back, her hooves tapping like a quiet rhythm against the dirt road. Alina watched the familiar land pass by rolling hills, clusters of desert flowers, and tall cliffs that guarded the horizon like ancient giants. She had grown up here, she explained softly, and every path held a memory. As she spoke, her voice carried both pride and affection, like someone talking about an old friend. Daniel listened carefully. Feeling honored, she trusted him enough to share pieces of her world. When they reached the small clinic near the reservation, a few people waiting outside immediately recognized Alina. Concern flashed across their faces as they hurried to help her. Daniel stepped aside to let her family and friends surround her, offering comfort and warm words. He felt a little out of place, but he stayed close enough in case she needed him. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes approached him. "You're the one who helped her?" she asked gently. Daniel nodded, feeling suddenly shy. "I just happened to be nearby." The woman smiled warmly. Happening to be nearby can sometimes be a gift. She introduced herself as Alina's aunt, then thanked him with a sincerity that touched him deeply. Before Daniel could say anything more, a medical assistant came out and helped Alina inside to examine her ankle properly. Daniel waited outside, leaning quietly against the jeep. For the first time since he heard her cry in the canyon, he finally let himself relax. The sky had turned a deep shade of orange, the last hour of daylight stretching thin. A soft breeze drifted through the open desert, carrying the faint smell of sagebrush. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the calm settle around him. He didn't expect anyone to come back outside for a while. But just a few minutes later, Alina's aunt returned, smiling in a way that made Daniel straighten up. "She's okay," the woman said with relief. "Just a sprain." They wrapped her ankle. "She needs rest, but she'll be walking fine in a few days." "That's good," Daniel said, genuinely happy. "She was very brave." "Brave?" "Yes." The aunt laughed softly, "but also stubborn. She tries to do everything by herself. I'm glad you were there." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. Compliments always made him a little uncomfortable. "I didn't do much." "You did more than you think," she assured him. Before he could answer, the clinic door opened, and Alina stepped out with the help of a crutch. She looked steadier, her face brighter, now that the pain was under control. When her eyes met Daniel's, something soft flickered there, gratitude mixed with a quiet connection neither of them could explain. "Hi again," she said with a small smile. Daniel's smile answered without hesitation. "Feeling better?" "Much better," she replied. "Thank you again." Her aunt gave her a knowing look, then turned to Daniel. "We're heading home now. Would you join us for a meal? It's our way of thanking you properly." Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected that. "Oh, I don't want to impose. You've already been kind." "Nonsense," the aunt said cheerfully. "In our family, gratitude is not something we rush. Please come." Alina looked at him with gentle encouragement. Daniel hesitated only for a second before nodding. "All right, if you're sure." "We are," she assured him. Soon, they were on the road again. This time following Alina's family truck. Starfire rode safely in a borrowed trailer they had brought, and Daniel drove behind them, feeling strangely nervous. He wasn't used to being welcomed by strangers. His work usually kept him alone in remote places, and meeting new people so warmly was something he rarely experienced. When they arrived at the community, Daniel's nervousness grew. It was a peaceful place, small homes spaced apart, children playing outside, elders sitting on porches, sharing stories. The setting sun painted everything in soft reds and golds. As he parked the jeep, several neighbors came out, curious to meet the man who had helped one of their own. Alina's family welcomed him with kindness that felt both warm and gentle. There were introductions, handshakes, and polite smiles everywhere. Daniel did his best to remember names, but there were many. Despite the cluster of attention, he felt strangely at ease. Every face carried friendliness, not suspicion. Inside the family home, the air was filled with delicious aromas, fresh bread, herbs, warm soup, and roasted vegetables. Someone was already cooking in the kitchen, turning the simple evening into something special. The living room was cozy, filled with handmade blankets, framed photos, and decorations that carried stories he did not yet know. Alina sat comfortably with her leg raised on a cushioned stool. She watched Daniel quietly as he entered, her expression softening even more. The moment she saw him, she gestured him closer. "Come sit," she told him. Daniel obeyed, still unsure if he deserved all this kindness. "Your home is beautiful," he said honestly. "Thank you," she replied. "My family built most of it themselves. They put a piece of their heart in every part." He could see that. Everything felt personal, warm, and lived in. As they talked, family members moved around them. Some cooking, some setting the table, some simply observing Daniel with thoughtful curiosity. Not one of them made him feel unwelcome. At dinner, the atmosphere became lively. People shared stories, teased one another, and created a soft, joyful noise that filled the room. Daniel found himself laughing more than he had in weeks. The food was delicious and made with care. Every bite tasted like tradition and love. Between conversations, Daniel noticed how often Alina's eyes drifted toward him, as if checking to make sure he felt comfortable. Whenever their eyes met, they exchanged a small smile. Quiet, but meaningful. After the meal, the older members of the family began talking about small moments from everyday life. Harvest gatherings, storytelling nights, the history of the land, and the beliefs passed down through generations. Daniel listened, respectfully, appreciating the richness of their culture. Then an older man with wise eyes began telling a gentle story. One about kindness, connection, and how sometimes two people's paths crossed. For reasons neither understood at first, his voice carried a calm rhythm, like a river flowing over smooth stones. Daniel didn't know it yet, but this story would soon be misinterpreted by others. For now, it was simply a peaceful tale told to honor the bond formed in moments of need. Alina watched the reactions around her, then leaned closer to Daniel. "They tell stories like that to remind us that every act of kindness creates a thread," she whispered. "Some threads stay only for a moment. Others stay for a lifetime. No one knows which is which until later." Daniel turned to her, intrigued. "And which one do you think today was?" Alina hesitated, her thoughts drifting. She looked at him with an expression that carried both curiosity and something tender beneath the surface. "I'm not sure yet," she said softly, "but it feels like it mattered." Daniel felt something shift in his chest, something slow, gentle, and unexpectedly warm. He realized that the peaceful canyon, the quiet rescue, and the shared moments afterward had woven something between them. Not a promise, not a duty, just a quiet connection that neither wanted to break. By the time the evening grew late and Daniel stood to leave, the entire family thanked him again. Alina looked at him with lingering warmth. "Thank you," she said once more, her voice low. "Not just for helping me, but for staying." Daniel smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep within him. "I'm glad I did." As he walked to his jeep, he realized something surprising. This was no longer just a day of photographs. It had become a day that marked the beginning of something new. Something neither he nor Alina had expected, yet neither wanted to forget. The next morning, Daniel woke up in his small hotel room, feeling strangely refreshed. Usually, after long days outdoors, his muscles ached, and his mind felt heavy. But this morning was different. His thoughts drifted immediately to Alina, her calm voice, the warm smiles of her family, and the peaceful atmosphere of their home. He had come to Red Canyon for photographs, yet now he felt drawn by something far more meaningful. After a slow breakfast, he checked his camera equipment and considered returning to the canyon for more shots. But a soft thought whispered inside him. Maybe I should visit Alina and see how she is doing. He debated with himself for a while, not wanting to appear too eager. Finally, he decided to go back to her community, telling himself it was simply polite to check on someone he had helped. Meanwhile, in Alina's home, the morning was filled with quiet activity. Her aunt prepared tea, her cousins moved around the house doing small chores, and her uncle polished a set of wooden carvings he had been working on. Alina, sitting comfortably with her ankle raised, watched them all with a peaceful smile. She had slept deeply for the first time in days, her heart unusually light. Her mind drifted back to the canyon the moment she had heard Daniel's footsteps. The relief she had felt, and the long walk where conversations flowed naturally between them. She found herself thinking about him more than she expected. Just as she wondered what he might be doing, her young cousin hurried into the room. "Alina, that man who helped you is outside." She blinked, surprised by how quickly her heart reacted. "Daniel?" "Yes," the boy said excitedly. "He brought something, I think." Alina smoothed her hair and took a slow breath before calling out, "Please ask him to come in." When Daniel stepped inside, he carried a small basket filled with simple items, fruit, tea, and homemade bread from a nearby bakery. He offered it with a sheepish smile. "I didn't know what to bring, but I thought you might like these," he said. Alina smiled warmly. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I know," he admitted, "but I wanted to." Her family welcomed him again with the same warmth as the night before. While Alina sipped her tea, Daniel sat beside her, and they fell easily into conversation. He asked how her ankle felt, and she told him it was improving. She asked about his photography, and he shared a few pictures he had taken the day before. But as they talked, something else was happening outside the room. Whispers were spreading. A group of older neighbors who had gathered outside the house began discussing what they had seen the night before. They had witnessed the elder telling the symbolic story about life-saving threads and connections. Many younger children had been present too, listening with wide eyes. The meaning of the story, gentle and metaphorical, had slowly changed as it passed from one person to another. By mid-morning, the whispers had transformed into something quite different. Some people were saying that Daniel and Alina were spirit-tied now. Others believed that an old tradition had been fulfilled, one that said a person who saved someone from danger created a bond that the community must honor. No one meant anything unkind. They simply misunderstood the story, letting imagination fill the spaces between words. A pair of elderly women excitedly told a group of teenagers that the connection between Alina and Daniel was more than gratitude, it was fate. A few men passing by nodded thoughtfully, wondering if the old tale had returned to life again. And some younger boys, giggling with mischief, said that Alina now belonged to Daniel. Not meaning ownership, but simply believing the tale was something dramatic and romantic. The news spread so quickly that by the time Daniel finished his tea and stepped outside for fresh air, several neighbors were already watching him closely. Some smiled knowingly. Others whispered behind their hands with curious excitement. Daniel noticed the sudden attention and felt confused. He wondered if he had done something wrong without realizing it. Alina's aunt stepped outside too, immediately sensing the strange atmosphere. She approached Daniel gently. "Is everything all right?" he asked. She gave a slow sigh. "There is a bit of confusion spreading." "Confusion?" he repeated. She nodded. "It seems the story Elder Natan told last night, the one about life-saving threads, was misunderstood. Some people think it was about you and Alina." Daniel blinked, unsure what to say. "But it was just a story." "Yes," she agreed. "A symbolic one. But stories can grow fast when people repeat them." Before they could continue, Alina came out with her crutch, her brow creased with worry. "I heard some of the cousins talking. Is it true? Are people really saying things like that?" "Afraid so," her aunt answered. Daniel felt a little uneasy. "I don't want to cause trouble for you or your family." "You haven't," Alina assured him quickly. "This is just people letting imagination take over." And they all looked around at the small knots of neighbors gathered nearby, some pretending not to stare, others openly curious. Alina sighed softly. I should talk to them. Daniel instinctively took a step forward. Do you want me to help explain? Her eyes flickered with appreciation, but she shook her head. Maybe let me speak first. She moved carefully toward the nearest group, her expression calm and kind. Daniel stayed back, watching her with quiet respect. He admired the way she approached others, not with irritation, but with patience. Alina spoke to a few people, smiling gently, explaining that the elder's story was symbolic and not about her and Daniel. The listeners nodded politely, but as soon as she walked away, their whispered conversations continued. She returned to Daniel with a small, resigned sigh. They heard me, but I don't think they understood. Daniel hesitated. Yes, she said softly. Some of them think you and I now have a special connection that comes from tradition. Daniel swallowed. But that's not how it works. Of course not, she agreed. It's just an old story, not a rule. Yet even as they talked, more neighbors approached, greeting Daniel warmly. Some even thanking him as if he had become an important figure overnight. One elderly man nodded respectfully. You brought Alina back to us. That means something. Daniel tried to answer politely. I'm grateful she's safe, but I didn't expect anything more. Alina stepped closer, her voice firm but gentle. He helped me because he is kind, that is all. But the elderly man simply smiled. Kindness creates ties that words cannot undo. Quote, Daniel felt heat rise in his cheeks. He didn't know whether the attention was good or overwhelming. As the day went on, the misunderstanding grew not in a harmful way, but in a way that made everything feel complicated. Some people believed the tale literally. Others simply enjoyed the excitement. Children ran around saying Daniel was part of the community now. A group of teenage girls whispered that something romantic must be happening. An older woman told Daniel he should not ignore a bond given by fate, making him almost drop the cup he was holding. Daniel didn't know whether to laugh or hide. Alina's family tried their best to calm the growing misunderstanding, but it felt like trying to stop a river with bare hands. The story had already created its own path. By late afternoon, Daniel felt a mixture of embarrassment and worry. I'm sorry, he told Alina quietly. I didn't want any of this to happen. You did nothing wrong, she reassured him gently. People are not upset. They're just curious and dramatic. He smiled a little. Still, I hope this doesn't cause you trouble. She looked at him thoughtfully. It's confusing, yes, but I'm more concerned about how you feel. Daniel blinked. Me? She nodded. Being seen as part of a tradition you don't fully understand, that must feel strange. Number 71. Try next? He exhaled. It does, but I'm more worried about your reputation. Alina's eyes softened. Thank you. But I know the truth. And the people who matter know it too. Their conversation paused when Elder Nathan himself approached. He walked slowly, leaning on his wooden cane, his wise eyes gentle. I hear my simple story has grown many legs today, the elder said with a warm chuckle. Alina and Daniel exchanged glances. The elder smiled kindly at Daniel. You helped our Alina. That alone makes you a friend to us. But the story I told was not meant to tie anyone together, only to remind us that kindness creates threads of respect. Daniel felt relief wash over him. Alina gave a grateful nod. Thank you for saying that. Still, the elder continued thoughtfully, threads formed by kindness should be honored, but not misunderstood. After Elder Nathan walked away, Daniel felt calmer. The misunderstanding still lingered in the air, but at least the truth had been spoken by someone respected. Alina touched the edge of her crutch lightly and met Daniel's eyes. Daniel nodded. Together? A gentle smile curved her lips. Together. As the sun began to set, the strange day settled into calm again. But the whispers, the curiosity, and the accidental legend were far from over. This was only the beginning of complications neither of them had expected. The next few days passed slowly, and each day seemed to bring a new wave of whispers and curious looks from the community. What had begun as a simple misunderstanding now felt like a story that refused to stay quiet. Daniel tried to visit Alina only when she invited him, not wanting people to think he was taking advantage of all the attention. Yet, every time he arrived at her home, he could feel eyes following him, some warm, some puzzled, and some a little doubtful. Daniel didn't blame anyone. He knew people were not trying to create trouble. They simply enjoyed stories, especially unusual ones. And the story of a traveler saving a young woman in the canyon, followed by an old tale about connections, was too interesting for many to ignore. Still, the attention made him uncomfortable. He didn't want to be the center of gossip, and he definitely didn't want Alina to feel pressured. But the pressure was starting to show. One morning, when Daniel came to see how her ankle was healing, he noticed that Alina seemed quieter than usual. She leaned on her crutch in the doorway, her expression soft but tired. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, but the smile she tried to give didn't stay long. "I'm fine. Just thinking." Daniel tilted his head. Thinking about what? She looked away, watching a group of neighbors talking across the yard. They didn't look upset, but they seemed to be discussing something with great interest. When they noticed Daniel's gaze, they quickly smiled and waved. But he could tell their conversation had been about him and Alina. Alina sighed softly. "People are still talking. It's getting a little overwhelming." Daniel's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Quote. She shook her head immediately. "You didn't do anything wrong. No one is blaming you. I'm just not used to being the center of attention." Daniel gave her a sympathetic look. "Do you want me to stay away for a while? Until things calm down?" "One." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the handle of her crutch. "No. I don't want you to stay away. I just want the noise around us to stop." Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." But stopping the noise was not easy. As the days passed, more misunderstandings grew. A few teenagers joked with each other, saying that Alina was already promised to Daniel. They didn't mean harm, they just thought it sounded exciting. Some older men nodded respectfully whenever Daniel walked by, as if recognizing him as someone who now held a special role in the community. A few women complimented Alina in soft voices, saying things like, "It seems destiny has plans for you." Alina tried to smile politely, but Daniel could tell it bothered her. She didn't want anyone thinking she belonged to someone simply because of a mistake. She believed in choosing her own path. Not one chosen for her by rumor. But not everyone saw the misunderstanding kindly. One afternoon, Daniel walked past the community garden and overheard a small group of young men talking. They were not angry, but their tone was uncertain. "Why is he still here every day?" one said quietly. "Maybe he thinks he's part of the family now," another replied. "He doesn't even know our traditions properly," a third added. "Shouldn't someone explain the story to him again?" Daniel froze, not wanting to be rude by listening further, but unable to walk away fast enough. The words weren't harsh, but they carried a questioning doubt, one that made Daniel feel like an outsider in a world he was trying to respect. Later that evening, when he visited Alina, he finally admitted what he had overheard. Her eyes softened with worry. "I'm sorry you heard that. Some of them are protective. They don't mean anything unkind." Daniel nodded. "I understand. This is your home. I'm the stranger here." She looked at him with gentle firmness. "You're not just a stranger anymore. They may not know you well yet, but I do." Her words warmed him more than he expected. Still, the tension didn't disappear. The next morning, Alina's aunt came to Daniel while he was helping repair a loose fence near her house. She spoke kindly, but with seriousness. "Daniel," she began, "I want you to know, we are grateful for everything you've done. But the rumors are getting louder. Some of the neighbors are confused, and a few are starting to worry." Daniel put down the tool in his hand. "Worry about what?" She sighed softly. "They think the old tale is becoming too real. Some believe that by staying close to Alina, you are accepting the story as true." He blinked. "But I haven't said anything like that." "I know," she replied gently. "But sometimes, silence becomes its own message." He looked down, feeling a mix of shame and frustration. "Should I talk to them?" She gave him a thoughtful smile. "Maybe. But wait until Alina is part of the conversation too. This affects her as much as it affects you." Daniel agreed, understanding the wisdom in her words. Later that day, Alina asked Daniel to walk with her slowly, using her crutch around the edge of the community. They found a quiet spot under a tree, away from curious eyes, where the wind moved gently through the leaves. "I think we need to talk about everything," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "I've been thinking the same." She sat on a low bench, and he sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "The truth is," she began, "I don't like people saying I belong to someone because of a story. It makes me feel like I have no choice in my own life." Daniel felt a deep ache in his chest. "I would never want that for you." "I know," she said quickly, her eyes gentle. "I trust you. You've never made me feel pressured." He relaxed slightly. "But," she continued carefully, "I also know that people see the way you look at me, and the way I look at you." Daniel's heartbeat fluttered. "And how do you look at me?" She smiled shyly. "With respect, with gratitude, and maybe something more. But that doesn't mean I want anyone deciding my future for me." Clued. Daniel took a slow breath. "Alina, I admire you a lot. But whatever this is, friendship, connection, or something else, it should be something we choose, not something others create." She nodded, her expression softening. "Exactly." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the warm breeze carry away the heaviness of their words. "I think we need to tell the community the truth," Daniel said. "Not harshly, just honestly." "Yes," she agreed. "Together. If we don't say something, the story will keep growing." The decision felt right, though neither knew how people would react. Just as they were preparing to head back, a small group of neighbors approached them. They looked polite, but clearly wanted to talk. One of the young men from earlier stepped forward. "Alina," he said gently, "we've heard a lot of things. We just want to know. Are the stories true? Are you and Daniel bound by some tradition?" Alina opened her mouth to answer, but Daniel shook his head softly. "May I?" he asked. She nodded. Daniel stepped forward with a calm, respectful tone. "I care for Alina as a friend, and I'm grateful to know her and her family. But the story you all heard, it was just a tale, a metaphor. It wasn't meant to be taken literally. Alina belongs only to herself, and I don't want anyone believing otherwise." The young men exchanged glances. One of them frowned thoughtfully. "So, there's no old rule being fulfilled?" "No," Alina said clearly. "None." Another man nodded slowly. "We're glad to hear it. We just didn't want anything unfair happening." Daniel smiled softly. "Nothing is happening except misunderstanding." The men left with lighter expressions, and Alina turned to Daniel, relief shining in her eyes. "That was good," she whispered. "You were calm." He chuckled. "Inside, I was terrified." She laughed softly, touching his arm lightly. "Thank you for standing with me." As they walked back to her house, Daniel felt the tension around them begin to lift, not completely, but enough to breathe again. The misunderstanding wasn't gone yet, but it was finally starting to fade. And as the sun set behind the hills, casting golden rays across the land, Daniel realized something important. The real thread between them wasn't created by stories, but by choice, respect, and the quiet moments they shared. And that, he hoped, was only the beginning. The evening after Daniel and Alina cleared up the misunderstanding with the young men, the entire community seemed calmer. People still watched them with curiosity, but the sharp edge of confusion had softened. Instead of doubtful looks, Daniel now received warm nods, and some even smiled politely. It felt like a small shift, but a meaningful one. Even so, Daniel understood that stories, especially the kind that travel quickly, did not disappear overnight. Some people still whispered, but the tone was gentler. They were no longer speculating about traditions or promises. They were simply wondering what would happen next between Daniel and Alina. In truth, Daniel wondered the same thing. The next morning, he walked to Alina's home carrying a small basket of fruit he had gathered with her younger cousins. They had insisted on helping him, giggling the whole time, as if they knew some secret he didn't. When he arrived, Alina was sitting outside under the soft shade of a mesquite tree. Her ankle had improved greatly, and she was now able to walk short distances without a crutch. She was gently weaving a bracelet from colorful threads, her hands moving gracefully. When she saw him, she looked up with a bright smile. "You brought something?" He nodded and offered the basket. "Your cousins helped. They said you like these fruits." She laughed softly. "They always know what I like. Thank you, Daniel." He sat on the ground across from her, feeling a peaceful stillness settle between them. After a moment, she asked, "How do you feel today? About everything? Eh?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Better. Talking to the community helped. I think they understand now." "Yes," she agreed. "It feels lighter around here." But then she looked at him more carefully. "And you? Are you okay with staying here a little longer, despite everything?" Daniel thought about it. When he had arrived in the region weeks ago, he hadn't planned to stay in one place for long. He was traveling, searching for new landscapes to photograph, new places to experience, new people to learn from. Yet somehow, this place and this girl had made him feel more grounded than anywhere else he had ever visited. "I'm more than okay with staying," he said honestly. "I feel connected here, and I want to help, however I can." Her expression softened. "I'm glad." For a while, they simply talked about the canyon, the wildlife, her family traditions, and the small cultural details Daniel found fascinating. The conversation flowed easily, as it often did between them, filled with gentle laughter and thoughtful questions. Later that afternoon, the tribal council sent a message asking Daniel and Alina to meet with them at the community gathering house. Alina raised an eyebrow as she read the note. "I guess they want to hear everything from us directly," she said. Daniel nodded. "It makes sense. They probably just want to be sure no confusion remains." Together, they walked side by side to the gathering house. Alina moved slowly but confidently, her steps steadier than they had been in days. Daniel stayed close enough to support her if she needed, but far enough not to appear overprotective. He wanted the community to see their connection as respectful and balanced. Inside the gathering place, several elders sat in a semicircle. Their expressions were calm and welcoming, not stern or intimidating. The eldest woman, who was known for her wisdom and gentle leadership, gestured for Daniel and Alina to sit. "We thank you both for coming," she began. "There has been much talk in the past week. And while stories often grow larger than truth, it is important for us to understand what is real, in order to keep harmony among us." Daniel nodded respectfully. "Of course. We want that too." The elder smiled. Good. Now, we would like to hear from both of you. What is your connection to each other? And how do you wish the community to understand it? Alina spoke first, her voice clear and steady. Daniel helped me when I was in trouble. He didn't hesitate. And he took care of me when I couldn't walk. I'm grateful for him. And I respect him deeply. But the old tale people remembered earlier, it doesn't apply to us. It never did. We want to stop the confusion. Another elder, a man with kind eyes, nodded. We understand. And Daniel, what do you say? Daniel cleared his throat gently. I care about Alina as a friend, and I'm honored to know her and her family. But I don't want anyone thinking she belongs to me, because of a misunderstanding. She belongs only to herself, and whatever path our friendship takes should be something we choose, not something decided by a story. The elders exchanged approving glances. Their relief was visible. The eldest woman spoke again. We are glad to hear your honesty. It is important for young people to have the freedom to choose their own paths. The story you all heard is a cultural tale meant to teach responsibility and respect, not to bind anyone against their will. We will make sure the community understands this clearly. Daniel and Alina looked at each other with relieved smiles. The weight that had rested on their shoulders for days finally lifted. But then the elder leaned forward with a gentle grin. However, it is also clear that there is genuine care between you both. We are not blind to that. We only hope that whatever grows in the future grows naturally, with mutual respect. Alina's cheeks warmed slightly, and Daniel felt his heart skip at the subtle implication. But neither felt embarrassed, only quietly grateful that the elders saw their bond, without forcing it into anything more than it was. When the meeting ended, Daniel and Alina stepped outside into the warm light of the late afternoon. The sky was painted in shades of soft gold and pale blue, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of desert flowers. So, Alina said lightly, I guess that's finally settled. Sid. I weigh. There want creastadely. Daniel chuckled. I think it is. They walked slowly toward the edge of the community, ending up near the place where they had first talked after the rescue. The memory made both of them smile. Daniel, Alina said softly, looking out at the horizon. I want to ask you something. Anything, he replied. She turned to face him. When everything started, did you ever think about leaving? He shook his head. No. Not even once. I was uneasy. Yes. But I didn't want to leave. Not when you still needed help. Not when things felt unfinished. And not when I felt. He paused, trying to gather his words. Felt what? She asked gently. He met her eyes with quiet honesty. Connected. To you. To this place. To everything here. Combinink. Her expression brightened with a warm, shy glow. I felt that too, even when things got confusing. Daniel took a slow breath, then smiled softly. So, where do we go from here? Alina looked up at him with calm certainty. We go forward. Slowly. Honestly. And without pressure. If something grows between us, it will grow because we choose it. Not because anyone else says it should. Daniel nodded, feeling a peaceful certainty settle in his heart. I'd like that. She stepped a little closer, not enough to break boundaries, but enough to show trust. And for now, she said gently, we can simply enjoy each other's company. He smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. They stood together in comfortable silence as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains. The sky shifted from gold to rose, then to soft purple. The land felt calm, the air gentle, the world peaceful. For the first time since the rescue, everything felt exactly as it should be, free from confusion, free from pressure, free from expectations. Just two people standing side by side, sharing a quiet moment that held more meaning than any tradition could ever demand. And though neither said it out loud, both understood something deeply. Some connections weren't created by legends or stories. Some grew from kindness, trust, and the simple act of choosing each other one moment at a time. Whatever their future would become, it would be theirs. Not because of a tale, but because of their hearts.